Welcome to Inside the Process. We do this every Wednesday night, and I try to take you into my world, either through experiences or through maybe some insight into the process of making music that I think you might find interesting. And I try to make it interesting for both musicians and non-musicians. I don't speak really technically, although tonight I am going to get into a little bit of a theoretical concept, but I think I can present it in a way that anyone who listens will find interesting, and hopefully even musicians can get something out of. But I'm really speaking to you who listen and follow and support me, for which I'm very grateful. So you'll see the link there that takes you to the support page of my website. Thank you so much for your continued help and encouragement and support that allowing me to do this. Especially now, since we have added the element of having friends in my home on Tuesday night, not Wednesday, but Tuesday, for the Piano for My Friends stream, which is what we call it now. That's just an additional encouragement to me, and there's just different layers here. So, and I have some ideas about keeping this going in a creative way. So I hope this engages you. And this one could be cool, or it could be a complete mess, but I don't think I've had a complete mess yet. So I've been thinking about this subject for a long time and how to present it in the right way. And I've got the way to do it. Not using the title I was going to use, but I think you'll pick it up later. But appropriately and accurately calling this moving within a story. So if you have a song tells a story. Yeah, sometimes, a conceptual thing, but sometimes an actual story. We can think of songs kind of outside the realm of what I play stylistically, but songs like The Devil Went Down to Georgia, or Cats in the Cradle, or American Pie. I mean, just out and out stories. But the music tells a story too. And if you have lyrics to a song, of course those lyrics are going to be corresponding to the song and help the story be told. But really, the story that the music tells transcends words. And even if a song has words, the music may tell a story unique to you and how it communicates in here, moving through the story. So that's what I'm going to try to explain. I'll play a little tune up front first. So I would say that all music moves within a story, or could be understood that way for the purpose of creating a larger context with the music. And this is a really, really important piece, especially for beginner students, to be able to tie one sound, one note to another, to another, to another, to begin to create now what is completely analogous to telling a story. Building words, creating sentences with the words, creating paragraphs that have an ebb and flow to it. All of that happens in music, in specific ways. So we take the that, and you could be internalizing the words, and that just does it. That immediately puts it into a story. But let's say you didn't know the words, or if this were like a classical piece, which most of my training and piano playing background actually is, at least in my younger years. And I don't do that now. I'm really detached from that. But I'll give some little examples. But let's say this was a classical piece, or something that didn't have the words associated with it. Now, can you feel emotionally the movement? But we're going somewhere, something's happening, like, I just went outside and saw the sun come up, and the sun's really beautiful. Whatever comes next, I didn't think this through ahead of time. And the birds sing and whatever else happens, right? And those same emotions, and I don't like to use the word emotions, those same feelings, there's the real emotions, those same things you feel by going outside and watching the sunrise, or going to the ocean, or living through an experience, or moving through a day, are the things that music connects us to. Beyond here, into here. And so managing that expression is a really important thing. And there are some things that I do with beginner students that, especially back when I taught a lot, I don't now. But if I had a beginner student right now, things that I've never seen in any method book, but just don't make sense to ignore. Like, if you've watched all of these streams, you'll know one of the things is that I'll have a student always define where the one is from the very, very beginning. So you develop a sense of connection to the pulse. Why can't that be taught from the beginning? So, you count 3 beats to a measure. Make sure you count steady, because if you're not really steady, it doesn't sound good. Huh? Well, yeah, but if it doesn't have a pulse, it might be sick or dead. So maybe you don't say it exactly like that to a young student, but you get what I'm saying. So a story takes a credible story, creates context within music. So let me tell you something that I would do to take music off the page of the student and have it be like part of their experience. Let me play a couple of just easy little pieces, and I mark the pages, supposedly, yeah, that like a student might play. So let's say I have, beginner, advanced beginner, and those classical composers whose names we know, most of them wrote easy pieces, particularly, for students, many of them. Schumann did Album for the Young. that's its own feeling just by virtue of like the tempo and the volume and all of that. But what I would have a student do as they're learning a piece is write a made-up story over the music that would have some correspondence to the music. Okay? Maybe we're rushing to the school bus in the morning. And the school bus slows down and stops. All right? And it was never the case, actually, even with a, like a third or fourth elementary school, child, that never the case that I didn't get a story. No. That's right. That was like, is this a double or triple negative? Well, anyway, every story made sense, is what I'm trying to say. Because once you understand the idea that you're connecting to this larger picture, right? Then you're thinking now away from, like, what note am I playing now? What am I doing now? What am I counting? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait, I'm only going to 4. By the way, every good boy does cheese. What? And some people who play music never get out of that. And if you can't get out of that, you're not playing. You're not really expressing music, which is just like expressing conversation or dialogue. So one of the ones that I used to give students very early on was this little Bartok thing, and I don't know that Bartok called this the Lost Doll, but it's ascribed to this very simple little Bartok thing. And when one student played it, it didn't give me a story. It gave me like a concept of this that was brilliant. It was, I don't remember who the student was. It was a long time ago, but it was just like cool and exactly what I'm talking about. So let me play this. You'll hear it. Whoops. It's funny, whenever I play this, I always hear like the French horns across the hunting range or something, quietly in the end, which really doesn't connect to a story. Or I could write a story about, walking, with your hunting rifle holding a French horn. But what one student said to me, said the Lost Doll, says, this is not about a girl who lost her doll. This is the emotion of a doll who lost her girl. It's like, well, yeah, you got it. You know what's going on here. So you can take the music off the page and begin to feel it, right? But also you get inside the music, and there's a technical concept. Oh, technical. There's a theoretical. There's just a life force, life movie. At the root of it all is a simple thing that we all experience, which is what I'm trying to say. And let's just make sure that I'm in order here. I had trouble writing this because I'm trying to conceptualize a lot of things in once. Okay, this is it. It's time to say it. And it's the concept of tension and release, or tension and resolution, right? Because what you feel, let me see. So what are you feeling? Right. See, if I stop there, what? No. I created some tension that I resolved, but I didn't resolve it like so I wanted to stop. I resolved it. So and you can feel that. And I always tell people that music making is really, really simple. It's conceptually very easy. If it weren't, I'd be so confused. I'd be fuddled easily, right? I can get into space, but you put like stuff in front of me and make me think about it. It's like, oh, where am I? What did I do? Why is my pen in the freezer? When did I put it there? You know, all that kind of stuff, right? It's one simple thing to manage, which is tension and release, or tension and resolution. Now, you're managing it in a whole bunch of things going on stacked up on top of each other, and that's the complex part. But you can take them all individually and you can manage it, and it's simple. It's just tension and release. It really is simple. You don't believe me, but it is. That was a questionable move at the end. Sometimes, you think about things a little bit, and it's too much. Sometimes thinking at all is too much. Sometimes you have to think. But speaking of thinking, okay, I say it's simple, and you're saying, what? No, stop. Now, there is a given here, a necessary element of communicating with any language. You do have to get to know it. Whether it's formally or casually or just living there. An illustration that I say a lot, so you probably heard me say it, is how does a toddler learn language? They learn how to talk, they learn how to communicate, they learn how to understand, to express things, in increasingly complex ways as they get older before anybody teaches them, typically, to read or write. So this idea that we learn music off the page, is not really the way it happens. I mean, we do. But the way that a toddler learns language through living there is the way that we actually appropriate things into our expression, right? And so I've lived in music all my life. And yes, I'm trained too in the little 2-year-old who puts words together eventually will go to school and will learn how to read and write too. But it's living there. But you live there for a lifetime and you just keep getting better at it. So I'm just not saying, that anybody who's played music for 6 weeks is going to find this simple. No, just like a toddler doesn't speak in complete sentences yet. But you get all excited, and so do they, when they use 2 words and 3 words and 4 words and all of that. So the context of what I mean by simple. So let's talk about this thing that I call tension and release. Now, and this can happen in all sorts of avenues. You can raise what I'm calling the tension or the excitement by getting louder, by getting higher, by getting faster, and you can bring it back and get slower, and you can relax back down again. Okay? And it's always this ebb and flow. But what we study theoretically in music, and the thing that in the music that we have in our culture that really makes it go underneath, not talking about rhythm, which is its own thing, is harmony, or a word that will mean something to many of you, chords. If you've ever picked up a guitar, you've played a chord. And a chord is something that is supporting what's going on, what we say harmonically. You have a melody, and then you have chords that express things that are inherent in the melody and make them explicit and help to move things along. And that's where we're going to kind of focus on. So here's a scale. What just happened? I kind of left it unresolved, didn't I? And it's like, it almost makes me want to fall into the piano. I know, hurry up. There, you're welcome. Right? And so that idea of just feeling where that is, and there are, specific theoretical, mathematical, places to go, helpful to learn. But when you're expressing things, you're not thinking about any of that. When you're expressing something, you're truly expressing, your thoughts are turned off. So you can then go from what you know. I watched a recent Chick Corea video. He did a lot of educational stuff in the last couple of years of his life, during the pandemic especially. And he distinguishes between memorizing and knowing. Because when you're memorizing, you're still thinking about it because you're using your memory. And when you know it, you have internalized it. And now you're not going through that path, and now you can express. All right, so here's a cute story. When my wife and I were first married, we were, as husbands and wives are, different personalities. We liked different things. And I'm sure we weren't the only couple who rationed the car radio. Right? And 30 minutes for you, 30 minutes for me. I'm watching the clock. Right? So when I had my 30 minutes, I'm sorry, my thoughts just went away. When I had my 30 minutes, I had the jazz station on, right? And they were doing some bebop thing, right? Fast tempo thing, and they got to the end and they pulled the Johnny Carson's Tonight Show band thing. Then the announcer started talking, and my passenger got very upset. My passenger was very mild-mannered, but not then. He was like, they didn't finish it. They need to finish it. Why didn't they finish it? And I got home about 15 minutes later with that still happening. Walked upstairs to the apartment, walked over to the piano, took a guess at the key, and I first thing I did when I got in the house. And she said, thank you. All right? So she could feel, we can feel that tension and release in what we do. So I feel like I should play something because I've talked a lot, but I have nothing set aside to play, so I'm going to keep talking and hope I'm not driving you crazy. Yeah. So what we need to do then is we need to be able to be comfortable going across the music. And now, when you're listening, and I'm really speaking to you as a listener, I'm talking too much about making music. When you're listening across the music. You're not listening to just one thing and picking it out and stopping, typically. You're doing that if you're like learning or transcribing. But if you're listening, you're taking in the whole thing and what it's saying. So what you have to do, of course, is you have to build your blocks as a musician to be able to do that. And one illustration I'll use, back in the day, I don't know what it's like now. I haven't been to kindergarten in a long time. But back in the day, a kindergarten classroom, at least a stereotypical one, would have the cardboard little strip going around all the walls of the letters of the alphabet in upper and lower case, letters, and I think cursive too, back in the day. So you'd have all these symbols on the wall. And you saw those symbols, and if a kindergartner actually thought about it this way, they'd say, look at all those things I have to learn. No wonder I have to go till 12th grade, right? And then you learn those letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, rather quickly. But then you find out that it's not about the letters, right? It's about the words you put together with the letters. T-H-E, the. And then you learn to see the not as three letters but one word. Right? Important thing. So now we're starting to create context. So T-H-E, word. C-A-T, word. I-S, word. S-I-C-K, word. Sorry for cat lovers. I don't know why I come back to the cat is sick, but it's, 12 letters across 4 words. Did I count that? They say musicians can only count to 4, right? And you go across those 4 words, and that would be like 4 chords in the guitar. Wang, wing, wing, wink. Each one of them being a word, right? The cat is sick. And let's say you're playing on your guitar. Let's say you play, okay, what's the easy key in the guitar? G, right. So let's see you play G, C, D7, G, right? Now you just said something, and you just said something that made sense in itself. And that's what we do, right? And now we went from 12 letters to 4 words to 1 sentence. And if you and I look at a sentence, whether or not we're speed readers, we're probably going to see the cat is sick and see it as a sentence right away. And that's how we internalize music. And if you wonder how we do it, how do I talk to you? And you're not thinking when you talk about the individual words. You're thinking about what you want to express, and you just have that familiarity with the words because you've lived there all your life, and you can use those words to express the thing exactly the same thing here. So, yeah. Now, I'm going to take that, well, I could do it in G. I'm just going to do it in C. But I could take those 4 chords I just threw the guitar, set about for the guitar. C, G, C, D7, G. If you don't know no chords, that's fine. It's just, I'm playing four things. Right. I'm going to move it to the key of C. I'm going to play the same thing in the key of C. I'm going to play C, F, A7, C. Now, can you hear what's happening? Those chords are taking us on a little trip. There's there it is. There it is. All right, this is as technical as I'm going to get. If you study music, especially jazz, you could study like chord theory till the cows come home. I get confused with all that. I mean, it's so much detail, but there are only three kinds of chords that exist. Chords that rest, chords that travel someplace, chords that take you to the point where you need to resolve, chords of highest tension, and then resolution. That's all we do. That's all it ever is. Now, of course, it's done in all sorts of complex ways, and I did leave out something. So when I introduce this concept of tension and release to like a complete beginner student, especially like a school-age student, I'll say something like, could you forget to eat if you never got hungry? Would you turn in all your homework necessarily if it were never due? What if you never had to go to the bathroom? If you felt like you did, you'd be in trouble. So you can say all of these little things that motivate us to propel us forward. See, everything that propels us, or every move we make is propelled by something. It's propelled by some tension that we are seeking to resolve. How often would you eat if you never got hungry? But of course you do get hungry. So one of the easy illustrations to use is you get up in the morning and you're too busy to have breakfast. And you're moving about your day, and all of a sudden you get to this, what do they say now, hangry, point, between breakfast and lunch, where you're going to bite off that, and then you find the Snickers bar or whatever, and you resolve it. So you connect these musical movements to life experiences because it is all connected with life experiences, right? And then the symbols, the things that we use in the symbols, the chords, the structures that we use in music, I would say, and I'm not a linguistic expert, and I'm really not, I understand music theory obviously, but I'm not, a music theory professor someplace, but I think there's a necessary equating, in many respects, of verbal and musical organization. Now, I remember when I was in college, and also after I graduated for a while, the chair of the music department would always ask me to come in and do a lecture about concepts of jazz for his general music class for non-majors. And I made a statement about like the necessary equating of chord progressions to speech and to and he asked me, he couldn't put me on the spot. He raised his hand, the instructor said, so are you saying that there are subject chords and predicate chords and verb chords? And I had to think about it, and I said, I can't give you a chart that proves it, but that's exactly what I'm saying. And I know some people would probably disagree, but it's expression. And put it this way: here's a concept as it just boils down for me. It's all going through the same brain. It's going through the same person. All the communication. So sure, it's going to be organized similarly, right? So so we have all this educational stuff. So it's good to learn things. If you don't want to go to school, you make her up to be a mule or whatever that is. Yeah. unfortunately. Okay, so just something to think about, because that was, even though I don't think I was that wonky, that was still wonkier than I'd like to be. So now I can keep it kind of simple here, and just demonstrate the idea of sounds that are relaxed, sounds that are tense, the first one you can walk away from and feel good. This one you walk away from, your blood pressure's higher, right? So tension always moves us to seek resolution, to eat that candy bar or whatever, and eventually we do, you know. And we resolve it. But then there's also sounds that I would call thick, as opposed to necessarily tense. In the way that we perceive and have developed, you know, in our musical expression, you know, this doesn't really lead you to a specific resolution. It just sort of sits there and it's thick. It's like a fog, right? So tension just does not mean like, you know, bland, right? I mean, not tension. Resolution or passiveness does not mean bland. And tension does not necessarily mean, you know, doing something like that. You know, it can be, there it is. Or, here's one. If you go to church in the old days and you have a hymn, what they call a Plagal Cadence, which is barely tension, but it's movement. Like, you know, you're not done. You know, you're not done saying, ah, like you're the dentist. Man, now you're in church, right? Right. Okay, so the three chords, they're the only three chords that exist. Yeah, it's slightly theory here. What we call the 1, the 4, and the 5. The only three functions that exist. Now, this gets extrapolated on, but my point at the beginning is that in all that extrapolation, the simple concept of that we're just setting up and resolving tension, in whatever realm it is, never ends. It's just all these different managements of that. So you start with the simple thing about traveling through a story, traveling through a sentence. The 4 chord, there's our chord of movement. The 5 chord, our chord of highest tension, and you could feel the resolution. Now, in terms of music theory, this is really basic, simple stuff. But many students, in fact most young students, are not taught this in their lessons, especially in the traditional classical lessons. And music theory in college, there is a percentage number, and I seem to remember it's in the 30s or something, but some high percentage of music majors drop out of college because of music theory class. Because especially classical musicians they learn how to like put the jigsaw puzzle pieces together of a piece, right? They learn all those mechanics of interpretation, but not about actually the understanding of music and the understanding that can inform us in here, right? And so now they're learning all these theoretical concepts without something to connect it to, and it just is really difficult. Now for me, music theory class in college was, oh, that's what you call it class. Because I had spent all my time before college never being instructed in any of that, having really like a kind of beginner classical teacher who I went as far with as I could. I actually stayed with him until he passed away, and I was like a young teenager. And then I didn't do any instruction until I was going to audition for college, because I should, I guess, tell the story at some point. But you know, when I went to college at first, it was because it was expected of me. I wasn't ready. I lasted a year, dropped out, came back a couple years later ready to learn, and it was a different story. But I figure, oh, I'm going to have to audition as a classical piano major at the time, Glassboro State College. So I got like my first real kind of high-powered teacher ever, who, when my dad took me to her like 6 months before my audition, she thought he was insane. And then at the end of the first lesson, he came back and he says, well, oh, no, we're fine. You know, because I had spent all of my time playing, you know, and this is like after I was like gigging with the Mederi brothers and doing all that. Because I'm sitting down, I'm figuring everything out. Now, if I had somebody to show me, it might have been a different ballgame. Or it might have just confused me. I don't know. But those 3 simple concepts of 1, 4, 5, which, and if you're not a musician, I can see where that's, I mean, I would expect that's confusing. But you can appreciate that, like, if somebody's studying music, you take a couple of lessons and you start working that out over a few weeks, and it starts to make sense. It's not an incredibly difficult thing when you're immersed in the process. But, and I do remember this, it took me 3 years to really figure out how to work that. I was 7 years old when I started actual piano lessons. I was 8 years old when I figured out the 5 chord. The idea, and I guess I pulled it out of something I was playing, that I could do that, you know. Right? And then if I just had that one little thing, that one little thing, I milked that for a year. Really. Hey, there it was. I could just do that and do that. And then I was 9 years old and I discovered the 4 chord. Now I could play the rest of the Camptown basses. There, which is, by the way, Amen in the month of the Camptown races. So now, all right, I tried to keep it simple, but I probably didn't play that many leading tones when I was 9, right? But I got 1, 4, 5. I could play country music, right? Cheated. Whoa. All right. Actually, that extra chord was what I figured out when I was 10. When I was 10, I figured out, because my teacher couldn't help me with it, and he knew I improvised, and he encouraged me, but he had absolutely no help. You know, and that was okay. I was fine just singing to the piano, you know, thinking, whoa, look at that, right? And what I figured out was, and I use the musician's term, secondary dominance. I figured out that I could go that 5-1, but I could string the 5 ones along. Like I could go 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, 5-1. So I could go, you know, it's like, it's a song that never ends. You know, if you never stop creating tension, you could just go on forever and spin up into the abyss, right? But the song that tied it together for me, and I know there's a Beatles tune that does this, and I can't think of what it is. But at the time, the song that tied it together for me was this. Same chord progression goes through the whole tune. was like the music theory that kind of propelled me. And I figured out other things, but I didn't know what they were, and I didn't know, what to call them or anything. Now, I will throw something else in. That 1-4-5 thing is kind of the foundation of like basic folk and country music and stuff. And the next level of it, 2-5-1 or 6-2-5-1, don't worry about figuring out. It's just like taking that formula and taking it a little further allows you to move from your cheating heart to or a slight tweak, which I'll do for students. That was 1-6-4-5, which is how they did it. But I'll do 1-6-2-5, which still works. Student of music, actually most of what you need to know, the great majority of what you need to know to play any standard Great American Songbook tune is contained right there in Heart and Soul, believe it or not. All right, so I kind of put this together kind of not quickly and not haphazardly, but it was just, because it's a general concept, and I never got really specific, so I'm going to hope that this wasn't completely ridiculous. And I'm going to end now with playing a phrase of Take the A Train and go back to the idea of telling a story with the music. Now, Take the A Train has words, and you could just, you should take the A Train. Let's take the music away. I mean, let's take the words away. And just listen. Now, obviously, that's pretty tense, isn't it? I wouldn't call it just thick. It's thick and tense. It needs to move somewhere, and it moves here. And that's less tense, but it still moves. So can you hear the arc? Oh man, you gotta go forward. I'll play it one more time slower so I play it correctly. Now you can stop. Now of course, that phrase will go on to another phrase, just like sentences or paragraphs continue in stories, right? But that's a complete thought all by itself. And that's like a sentence or a little story in itself. So I'm going to ask you, if you were like writing a story, if you were my piano student, you had to write story over the music, think of, now obviously that's like, what just happened that made that sound happen? And then that little scamper takes you to the resolution, right? So you have a little incident, and then you have work it out. Can you think of something? I don't want to ruin it, but I'll give you what first thing I thought of. Driving a car, hit a pothole, blow out your tire, get out of the pothole, limp your way, flap, 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 over to the curb, over the shoulder, right? And now obviously, when you're playing music, you're not thinking all of those things. But it's really helpful to get into the concept of it, to say, oh, that's, yeah, I can feel that. And then you can project that in without thinking about it, but you know what I'm saying. But then that's going to have me, now, maybe you're going to say, no, that shouldn't have that much emphasis there. We didn't blow out a tire. No, you just, you just like heard a thunderclap and you kept driving. Great. Have all these discussions, right? And that's interpretation. That's, okay, man, I wasn't going to go here. But I'll just say this because it's relevant here. What you see on the page, and I've said this before, I opened this up. This isn't music. This is information. The music is what you play. And in order to take something off a page, particularly, you have to put the humanity back into it that putting it to a page took away. That's just information. There was emotion, there was composition, there was integrity, there was humanity, there was everything that went into that. Now it's just this stuff. And you put that back in. And that's what the stories can do, or that's just what learning to feel the music you play. I can't say it often enough what Lang Lang says to students. Don't just play a note, feel the note, and make every new piece your best friend. Now, he's being more micro. He's talking about every note. But yeah, you do feel every note. And I'm sort of amending that and saying, you're feeling every note in a larger context. So, now I'll play Take the A Train. And my brain is completely scrambled for trying to talk about all this stuff. So I need to go listen to a metronome for an hour and come back, but I don't have an hour, so here we go. So there it is. Hopefully this was helpful or interesting or amusing or something. Thanks for being with me, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Keep in touch with the website, and I'll stay in touch with you. Thanks for considering the support link. Thanks for supporting me. Thanks for being here. See you soon.